Once upon a time in the land of Anocha, there lived an honest and great king. He was loved by all, and he did everything within his power to satisfy the people under him. He got married to his wife Adanne, who bore him only one child, whom they named Ugomma. Both the king and his queen, including the villagers, were very happy for the birth of Ugomma. The king invited friends and family from far and near to come and celebrate with them for the birth of the princess. The king and his wife were living happily until after 5 years. Adanne, his wife, was unable to conceive again, and that became a great concern for both the royal family and the villagers at large because the king needed a male child to take over his throne. The king's cabinet members suggested that the king should take a second wife, but because he loved his wife so much, he refused to listen to the suggestion. He tried everything within his powers, took Adanne to different places to know if she could conceive, but all was to no avail. When Adanne cried almost every night, hoping and praying that she would take in and bear the king a male child, an heir to the throne. The king was ready to do anything for his wife. He knew that Queen Adanne might not be happy with his idea of getting a second wife. They waited and tried many years, but there was no sign of pregnancy. It got to a point that both the king and his wife became tired, and they both agreed that the king should take a new wife, as the villagers suggested. Though this idea didn't sit well with them, but they had no choice. As at that time, Ugoma had grown into a happy and chubby little kid who would always ask her mother when she would be getting a kid brother or sister. King Amobi went ahead to marry a second wife, and after all the necessary ceremonies, the second wife, whose name was Amanda, went home with the king and his family. It didn't take up to a month after Amanda's arrival that the king's palace became a battlefield. Amanda was always picking fights with Adanne on every given opportunity. She would purposely take Adanne's things without informing her, and she doesn't allow Adanne close to her belongings. Sometimes she would perpetrate some evil deeds and frame Adanne up for it. She also went as far as adding large amounts of salt to the king was meant to serve the king. The king had called and cautioned the two, especially Amanda, but Amanda was not ready to listen to anyone. Not long after, Amanda got pregnant. She was happy and bragged about how she was going to give the king a male child and how her son would take over the throne and the kingdom. She rained insults on Adanne on a daily basis, telling her that she was not woman enough, that she couldn't give the king a male child. Adanne tried to avoid her by all means, but Amanda was unavoidable. 9 months later, Amanda gave birth to a bouncing baby girl. She was sad and unhappy. She couldn't believe that after all her bragging about giving birth to an heir to the throne, she ended up having a girl child. So the king wasn't truly happy, but that didn't stop them from celebrating the birth of Sochima, Amanda's first daughter. After the birth of Sochima, Amanda's trouble increased, and most at times the king would scold and threaten to punish her, but that didn't change anything. A year later, Amanda took in again and delivered yet another bouncing baby girl whom she named Uzochi. This time around, the king was furious and regretted ever getting married to Amanda, but that didn't stop him from providing for Amanda and her children. Amanda too was angry over everything, that she wished she could perform some magic and transform Uzochi into a boy. The king decided never to have anything to do with Amanda again, but Adanne urged him not to give up yet. Who knows, things might turn out for good. Amobi agreed with his wife Adanne, but unfortunately, Amanda developed several health challenges which stopped her permanently from conceiving. The king had no choice other than to give up on trying, and he was ready to face whatever fate brings his way. The three princesses were growing in good health, but they hardly get along as Queen Amanda would always instigate her children against Ugoma. She hated to see them together. Though Ugoma loved playing with her sisters, but Queen Amanda wouldn't let that happen. She would always scold her children whenever she saw them together, warning them strictly not to go close to Adanne and her daughter. Queen Adanne had to instruct her daughter, Ugoma, to stay away from Amanda's children. This continued until Amanda's children developed that hateful character towards Ugoma. They would always come together to fight her for no reason at all. Sometimes they would sneak into her room, steal her personal belongings, and burn them without the knowledge of anyone. Ugoma wished she never had sisters. A few years later, Ugoma grew into a very fat princess, which made her look older than her age mates. She hated her body so much because some of the villagers would laugh at her and even make mockery of her, especially Sochima and Uzochi, her two sisters who had this elegant body structure. Ugoma would cry most at times and wish that her body would reduce to that of her sisters. The king and the queen tried to encourage her to appreciate her body size, but that didn't make any difference at all. Her sister kept body shaming her, which led to her starving herself for days, but that still didn't change anything. There was a day she fainted on her way back to the palace because she had skipped her meal for several days. The part that pained her the most was that no single man was showing interest in her, but her sisters were always with one young man or another. Even when her fellow maidens go for swimming, she would stay back at home because she knew she probably wouldn't swim because of her size. And even when she tried to just follow them and watch them, they would always tease her and make jest of her, which stopped her permanently from associating herself with them. She had done several things, gone to different places, and even took some substances which are detrimental to her health just because she wanted to be like others. Queen Adane frowned at her actions. She warned her on several occasions to stop crucifying herself because of something she cannot change. But Ugoma was ready to try everything possible. One day, Ugoma went to a herbalist who promised to give her medicine that would help her lose weight. She was happy and excited because her wish of being like her sisters will soon come to reality. She would watch herself in the mirror every day to know if she was truly losing weight, but unfortunately, after taking the medicine given to her by the herbalist, she was extremely sad because it seemed as if she added extra flesh instead of reducing. She went ahead to request for a different set of medicine, which still didn't yield anything. One day, she summoned courage and went to her sisters to ask them about what they eat and how they manage to watch their weight. Her sisters laughed and laughed until they got tired of laughing. One of the sisters, Sochima, told her to give them some money in order to give her the secret behind their stature. Ugoma was happy and she went ahead to sell some of her royal apparels. But little did she know that it was all a lie and a way to set her up. Ugoma took the money to them, but they told her to keep the money in her bag and bring it the next day. Sochima and Uzochi sneaked into the king's chamber and stole the exact amount of money which Ugoma wanted to give to them. When the king discovered that his money was missing, he called all his household and asked them about the money. To Ugoma's surprise, her two sisters accused her of taking the money before the king. Ugoma told the king that she was innocent, and because the two sisters insisted that they saw her taking the money, the king instructed that Ugoma's room should be searched thoroughly. Unfortunately for Ugoma, the money she realized from selling her belongings, which was the same amount with what the king was looking for, was found inside her bag. She tried to explain, but the king was too angry to listen to her. He trusted Ugoma so much and least expected that from her. Queen Adane pleaded on behalf of her daughter, but all was to no avail. The king issued an order that Ugoma should be punished severely, and this made Sochima and Uzochi to be very happy. Ugoma cried and cried until her eyes became red and puffy. She deserted everyone around her, and the only place you would find her was at the village river. She would go there and stay when everyone must have left the river. She became extremely lonely, sad and unhappy. A few months later, Queen Adane, Queen Amanda, and their children were summoned before the king and his cabinet. While in the meeting, they were told that since the king doesn't have a male child, one of the princesses should get married to a reputable man in the kingdom, and her husband will become the king while she becomes the queen of Anyocha, and this can only be accorded to the first person to get married within the next 6 months. In that way, they will be able to preserve the king's throne. Immediately this was said, Amanda and her children burst into a hilarious laughter. They were indirectly telling Ugoma that she can never be the one to get married first. Amanda and her children were very happy. To them, no man would want to marry a fat princess. Ugoma went into depression, knowing that there was no way she was going to get married before her sisters, even though she was the first daughter. Her most concern was not about becoming the queen, but she was more concerned about how her stepmother and her children will treat them after one of them ascends the throne. Queen Adane tried to make her see the light at the end of the tunnel and fight for herself, but Ugoma's thinking was beclouded by the truth she was seeing around her. Every morning, Her sisters would come and flaunt themselves around her and remind her that she was nothing compared to them and how they would soon take over the kingdom and make her life and that of her mothers miserable. It hurt Ugoma deeply, knowing there was nothing she could do. Ugoma's sisters began making their own plans. They were sure that those numerous men around them wouldn't hesitate to accept the offer of getting married to them. Ugoma thought of the shame and embarrassment she would receive after one of her sisters became the queen. She then decided to take her own life. She went to the river as usual, and knowing fully well that she couldn't swim, she jumped into the river to drown herself. The river didn't hesitate to welcome her, but as she was about to be drowned, a young and handsome man who was coming into the village saw her, and being a good swimmer, he dived into the river to rescue her. The young man, whose name was Obinna, resuscitated her and expecting her to be happy and grateful. But to his greatest surprise, Ugoma was angry at him for saving her life. She cried bitterly, and Obinna was moved to ask her the reason why she wanted to end her own life. Ugoma narrated her ordeal with him. Obinna was moved, but he told her that it was wrong to try to kill herself because of how she was naturally created. He went ahead to let her know that she was the only one to define her worth, not the people around her. Obinna made her understand that she should focus on adding value to her life instead of letting people's mockery eat deep into her. That the more she worries about them, the stronger their words become. He encouraged and motivated her into being the best she can and also promised to be her friend. Ugoma went home for the first time in a very long time, looking happy and lively. Her sisters came as usual to taunt her, but she just laughed heartily and went inside, leaving them behind. She had made up her mind not to allow their words get to her. All she wanted at that point was to discover the hidden treasures in her. The sisters were baffled and thought that maybe she had found a suitor. Because of this, they had to make their plans fast, but to their greatest astonishment, none of their male friends were willing to take any of them in as a wife. They had no manners, and no man was ready to handle that. Though they were both outwardly beautiful, but the inner beauty mattered more to those men. That was the greatest disappointment of their life. Goma kept aside every thought of marriage and began to work on herself. Little did she know that she had this golden voice. When she sings, heads would turn to know where this melodious voice was coming from. She would go to the village square to sing, and before a twinkling of an eye, people had already gathered around her to hear her golden voice. She became the envy of many, and most of the villagers began to appreciate and come close to her. Many people would offer to pay her to teach them how to sing. Ugoma became a star, and she became the most happy princess. She was also grateful to Obinna for helping her discover this part of her. Queen Adane was happy for her daughter, and most especially because she was no longer sad. Amanda and her children became jealous of Ugoma. They went ahead to spread rumors about Ugoma, but none of the villagers were ready to listen to them. Ugoma and Obinna continued to meet at the village river almost every day, and before they realized it, they deeply fell in love with each other. And it didn't take long before Obinna asked her hand in marriage, and Ugoma didn't hesitate to accept his proposal and take him to the king. Queen Adane and Ugoma's joy knew no bounds. They danced and sang until they got tired, while Queen Amanda and her children grinded their teeth in jealousy and anger as they thought of a way of ruining everything for Adane and her daughter. On the day of the traditional marriage, Queen Amanda secretly poisoned all the drinks brought for the ceremony, but unfortunately for her, someone caught her and reported to the king. And when it was confirmed to be true, the king was highly furious, and he made a decree that Amanda and her children should be banished from the kingdom and never to step foot into it again. They left in shame as people mocked and spat on them. The ceremony continued. Everyone ate, drank, laughed, and danced. Ugoma and Obinna happily got married, and years later, after the demise of King Amobi, Obinna became the king of Aniocha, and Ugoma became the queen, loved and respected by all. Ugoma realized that she was not worthless. She was unique and beautiful in her own